first time I met my neighbor, he was standing on my lawn, pointing at a crack in the sidewalk, like it had personally offended him. You see this? He said. This is a tripping hazard. City could fine you for this. I still had the keys in my hand. The moving truck was parked out front. Boxes everywhere. I hadn't even brought in my bed frame yet. I stuck out my hand. I'm Daniel, I said. Just moved in. He looked at my hand like it was a test he didn't have time for, then finally shook it. Frank, he said. I live next door. Been here 22 years. We try to keep things a certain way on this street. He said we, but I already knew he meant I. I glanced at the crack. It was hairline, maybe a quarter-inch wide. The sidewalk looked better than most I'd seen in the city. I'll get it looked at, I said. Once I'm actually moved in. He nodded once like a judge handing down a conditional pardon. Good, he said. Because if I see the city inspector out here, I'm telling them I warned you. Welcome to the neighborhood. I'm 46. When I bought that house, I'd just gone through a divorce that had taken most of my savings and a good chunk of my optimism. I wanted one thing. Quiet. Not luxury. Not a big yard. Just a small, decent place where I could close the door and not feel like the walls were listening. The street looked perfect for that. Tree-lined. Mostly older houses, all maintained but not fancy. On my first tour, it was a clear Saturday and I saw kids on bikes, a couple walking a dog, an older guy watering his roses. No parties, no blasting music. Just the kind of normal I hadn't had in years. The real estate agent had said, "It's a stable neighborhood. People stay a long time." I thought that was a good thing. I didn't realize it also meant some people thought the street belonged to them. Frank's house was on my right. 2 stories, white paint a little too bright, shutters that matched the mailbox. The grass was cut short enough it looked like it hurt to walk on. His driveway was swept clean. He had one of those little signs that said, "Protected by security system," though I never saw actual cameras. I saw him a lot those first weeks. Not because he came over to welcome me, because every time I stepped outside, he was already there. Sweeping, trimming, inspecting something. The first week it was the sidewalk crack. The second week he caught me as I was carrying boxes in. "You're putting those in the garage?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Still figuring out where everything goes." He nodded at my pickup. "You going to keep that parked on the street?" "I was thinking driveway," I said. "Why?" "We have a thing about sightlines here," he said. "If everyone parks in their drive, it looks cleaner." Just saying. I didn't answer. I was too tired. By week 3, I had a running tally in my head. Trash cans pulled in 5 minutes late. Weeds near the fence line. Leaves in my gutter that he claimed were blowing onto his roof. Everything came with a "just saying." I started smiling less when I saw him. The first real problem hit about a month after I moved in. I came home from work one evening and found a bright orange notice taped to my front door. "Notice of potential violation," it said at the top. Something about yard maintenance standards and complaints received. There was a box checked. Overgrown vegetation, encroaching foliage. I looked at my yard. The grass was a little long, sure. I'd been working extra hours, and the mower the previous owner left me had given up after 2 uses. But it wasn't a jungle. The bushes near the front looked fine. I didn't see anything encroaching on anything. I dialed the number on the notice and reached a woman at the city code office. She sounded exhausted, like she'd been dealing with people who hated each other all day. "It's a preliminary notice," she said. "Someone filed a complaint. We send one of those before we send anyone out, just to give you a chance to resolve it on your own." "Someone," I said. "You can't tell me who." "We don't usually share names," she said. "But if it makes you feel better, this came through online. We get a lot of those." I didn't need a name. I could see him through my front window, coiling a hose like he was wrapping up a crime scene. That night I cut the grass, hacked back every bush, and cleaned up the clippings until my back ached. The next morning, I walked over to his side of the property line. Everything look okay now? I asked. He didn't look up from his hose. I'm sure you got the message, he said. We all have to do our part. Can't let one house drag down property values. We all. Property values. I went back inside and told myself to let it go. He was just that type of guy. Petty, controlling. As long as I kept my head down and my lawn trimmed, it would be fine. I was wrong. The second notice came 2 weeks later. Noise complaint. It said there had been repeated loud disturbances after 10 p.m., documented by concerned neighbors. I laughed out loud when I read it. Most nights I'm in bed by 11. I don't host parties. I don't have a drum set. The loudest thing in my house is the ice maker. I called the number again. Same tired woman. I think someone's playing games, I said. We get that sometimes, she admitted. But when there's a complaint on the books, we have to log it. If it continues, an officer might be sent out. Can I at least know what nights? I asked. She checked. Last Saturday and the one before, she said. Sometime around 11:30. The note says shouting and loud music. That was funny in a not funny way. Both those Saturdays I'd been watching movies alone with the volume low enough my own TV subtitles annoyed me. I hung up and stood in my kitchen. I didn't look at Frank's house. I didn't need to. I could feel him on the other side of the wall like a neighbor whose TV is turned up too high. Only his show was some reality program where he made up the rules. I tried talking to him. One neighbor to another, I said one evening, when I caught him taking his trash cans out. If you have an issue with me, can you just come tell me, instead of calling the city? He frowned like I'd accused him of stealing. What are you talking about? He asked. I held up the latest notice. Noise complaints, I said. And the yard thing. I've lived here a month. You could have just knocked. He shrugged. If more than one person complains, it goes through the system, he said. Maybe you don't notice how loud you are. These houses are closer than they look. I'm home alone most nights, I said. No parties, no music. If it was loud, I'd know. Well, someone doesn't like it, he said. All I care about is keeping this street decent. If that bothers you, maybe this isn't the right neighborhood for you. He grabbed his empty bin and dragged it back without looking at me again. My jaw tightened. You ever have that feeling where you know, if you say one more sentence, you'll say 20 you can't take back? I went inside instead. It might have ended there. A miserable equilibrium. Him filing petty complaints, me adjusting my life around his irritation. But he didn't stop. He escalated. One Saturday morning, I walked out to find a long, white scratch running from the front fender of my truck to the back. Not deep, but obvious. I hadn't parked near anyone at the store the day before. I hadn't brushed against anything. It looked like someone had run a key down the side with deliberate, steady pressure. My stomach dropped. I stood there staring, the coffee cooling in my hand. Damn shame, a voice said. I turned. Frank was at the edge of his driveway, arms folded. Kids these days have no respect, he said. You really should park in your garage at night. Less temptation. He sounded almost satisfied. Did you see anything? I asked. He shook his head. If I had, I'd have said something, he said. Always do. That's my problem, I guess. I care too much. I looked at his face for a long second. No flicker of guilt, no nervousness. Just that same smug, tight expression. I filed a police report even though I knew nothing would happen. The officer who came out took a couple photos, wrote some notes, and gave me a card. Without a camera, it's hard to prove anything, he said. Probably random. Random. Sure. I called my insurance, got a quote on the repaint, and added fix scratch to the growing list of expensive things I hadn't planned on. That night, I ordered 2 motion-activated cameras online. If the city and the cops couldn't see what was going on, I'd make sure someone could. The cameras were small and black, with little magnetic mounts. I put one over my driveway, The other I placed near the back corner of my house, pointed toward the shared fence and the strip of grass between our yards. I didn't tell anyone. The first week, they caught nothing more than a few raccoons, a stray cat, and me coming and going. I started to wonder if I'd overreacted. Then the wall broke. Literally, it was a retaining wall. Short, maybe 3 feet high, running along the back of our properties. Whoever had built the houses decades ago hadn't leveled the ground properly, so they'd put in the wall and backfilled behind it. It wasn't pretty, but it kept the soil from sliding down into the lower yard. Mine. One Tuesday evening, I got home and saw bright yellow tape strung across the back corner. A chunk of the wall had crumbled, maybe 5 or 6 stones fallen out. Dirt had spilled into my yard in a messy slope. A city truck was parked out front. So was Frank. He was talking to a guy in a reflective vest. I walked over. "Is this yours?" the inspector asked, nodding at the wall. "I mean, it's on the property line," I said. "I just bought the place. Was it like this before?" Frank chimed in before the inspector could answer. "It was cracked already," he said. "I told him about it when he moved in. Said it could give way if he kept watering like he does." I looked at him. I hadn't ever watered that part of the yard. "From what we can see," the inspector said, "the pressure has been building for a while. If it collapses more, it could cause runoff issues for adjoining properties. You might be liable if it damages anything down the slope." "Liable how?" I asked. He shrugged. "Fines, required repairs. Depends what happens. For now, this is just a notice, but you should address it." I looked at the wall. The broken section was near Frank's side. The soil behind it seemed disturbed, like someone had been digging, then covered it up. "I'll get a contractor out," I said. The inspector handed me a copy of the notice and left. Frank stayed. "Told you things here are stricter than in other places," he said. "You'd know that if you'd lived here longer." "You filed the complaint," I said. He didn't deny it. "If the wall goes," he said, "it's my yard that's going to flood first. I'm not paying for someone else's negligence." I didn't answer, because at that moment, something clicked. Not anger, not fear. A pattern, crack, grass, noise, scratch, wall. Every issue was either something he could blame me for or something that made me look bad to other people. I went inside. It was time to actually look at what my camera had seen. The feed from the back camera didn't look like much at first. Grainy footage of trees swaying. A cat walking along the fence. Shadows moving as the sun went down. Then I saw him. 2 nights before the wall gave way? Timestamp, 1:13 a.m. Frank, in a hoodie, walking along the back of his yard with a shovel over his shoulder. He stopped right above the part of the wall that later broke. He jabbed the shovel into the ground, started digging. I watched, jaw clenched, as he removed a strip of soil along the inner edge of the wall, right where the stones met the earth. He worked for maybe 15 minutes. Steady, like a man weeding a flower bed. Then he stepped down into my yard. The camera caught him from the side as he pushed against one of the stones with his foot. It shifted a little. He pushed again. Harder. The stone didn't fall out completely, but the whole section moved. He stepped back, looked around, then climbed up, shoveled some loose dirt back to cover the disturbed area on his side, and walked off. I fast-forwarded. The next evening, rain. Not heavy, just a steady drizzle. 2 hours after it started, a chunk of the wall collapsed. So, no, it hadn't given way because I watered too much. It had given way because he'd weakened it on purpose. I sat back in my chair. For a minute, I thought about marching over, showing him the footage, and shouting until my voice gave out. Then I remembered how every direct conversation with him had gone so far. He'd deny. He'd twist. He'd frame it like I was unstable, paranoid, aggressive. He'd probably call the city on me for harassment. I didn't need him to admit anything to me. I needed him to admit it where it counted, with the same people he liked to impress with his rule following. So I copied the footage to a USB drive, labeled it Backyard Cam, and wrote an email. I set up a meeting with the same inspector who'd come out. His name was Carl. He looked more tired in his office than he had in my yard. "We don't usually take sides in neighbor disputes," he started. "I'm not asking you to," I said. "I'm asking you to see what actually happened before you decide whose negligence this is." I plugged the USB into his computer and clicked play. We watched in silence. The part where Frank dug, the part where he pushed, the collapse after the rain. Carl leaned forward. "Is that who I think it is?" he asked. "It's the guy who filed the complaint," I said. He rubbed his forehead. "Do you mind if I keep this?" he asked. "That's why I brought it," I said. He sighed. "Okay," he said. "Based on this, we're not pursuing any violation against you right now. In fact, this might become a different kind of case." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Intentionally damaging a shared structure is not a small thing," he said. "Especially when you then blame the neighbor. I'll have to talk to my supervisor, but at the very least we'll be revising our notes." I nodded. "One more thing," I said. "If there's any formal review, I'd like to be present." He glanced at me. "Why?" he asked. "Because if he's going to talk about me," I said, "I want him to do it while I'm in the room." The review happened 2 weeks later. Not a courtroom, just a conference room at the city building. Long table. Fluorescent lights that made everyone look more tired than they were. Carl was there. His supervisor, a woman in her 50s. Me and Frank. He walked in like he was there to receive an award. He nodded at the officials, then at me. "Daniel," he said, polite. I said nothing. The supervisor started. "Mr. Harris," she said. That was his last name, I'd learned. "You filed several complaints about your neighbor's property, including the condition of the retaining wall at the back of your lots. Is that correct?" "Yes," he said. "I've lived there decades. I know when something's not safe. I'm just trying to keep the area up to standard." "We appreciate residents following code," she said. "However, we've reviewed some additional information related to the wall." She nodded at Carl. He opened a folder, pulled out a printed still from the footage, and slid it across the table to Frank. It was a clear image. Him in the hoodie, foot braced against the stone. Frank stared at it. The color drained just slightly from his face. "What's this supposed to be?" he asked. "This is you on your property 2 nights before the reported collapse," she said. "We also have video." "That could be anyone," he said too quickly. "The picture's grainy." "It's you," I said quietly. He ignored me. The supervisor clicked something on the laptop. The video started on a small screen, but the angle was enough. We watched the whole thing. Nobody spoke. When it ended, she paused. "Do you want to explain what you were doing that night?" she asked. He shifted in his chair. "I was checking the wall," he said. "You can see it was already cracked. I was testing how stable it was." "You were digging at the base," Carl said. "Directly against the stones. That doesn't look like checking." "It was already failing," Frank insisted. "If I hadn't reported it, it could have caused a mudslide into his yard. Maybe worse." "It collapsed after you removed soil and pushed the stone," the supervisor said. "That suggests you contributed to its failure." Frank pressed his lips together. "I'm not the one who bought a house with old structures and then ignored them," he said. "If he'd done proper maintenance—" "Your complaints implied he was negligent," she interrupted. "But this footage shows you tampering with the wall before you reported it. That is a serious misrepresentation." I watched his breathing get a little faster. "I didn't mean for it to break," he said. "I was just giving them a reason to actually look at it. You people never respond unless something's dramatic." "You weakened a shared barrier and caused damage to your neighbor's yard," she said. "Then tried to have him held responsible for it." "It's a few rocks," he snapped. "Let's not act like I knocked down a house." She sat back. This is exactly why we're here, she said. Mr. Dalton, she nodded at me, brought this to our attention instead of escalating privately. We appreciate that. Based on what we've seen, we will not be issuing any violations against him. Instead, we're documenting that you contributed to the wall's failure. He scoffed. What does that mean? He asked. It means, she said, that if your neighbor chooses to seek compensation for repairs, he will have this on record. It also means that further false or misleading complaints from your address will be scrutinized before any action is taken. He looked at me then. If looks could file reports, I'd have been buried. You set up a camera? He said. Yes, I said. After the scratch on my truck. You think I did that too? He demanded. I think you like problems that start on my side and end up on yours, I said calmly. And I think you're used to everyone believing you because you've lived there longer. The supervisor raised a hand. We're not here to settle every dispute, she said. We're here about the wall. And as far as the city's concerned, this matter is closed on Mr. Dalton's side. She turned to Frank. You're free to go, she said. But I'd advise you to consider how your actions look from the outside. He stood up so fast his chair squeaked. As he left, he leaned toward me just enough that only I could hear. You have no idea what you've started, he said. I looked at him. I think I finally do, I said. He walked out. You'd think that would be the end of it. In a movie, maybe it would be. He'd be shamed, I'd be vindicated, roll credits. Real life is messier. For a while, things went quiet. No new notices, no mysterious damage. I still saw him outside, but he stopped talking. He'd glance at my house and look away. I thought maybe he'd learned something. Then the letters started. Not from the city this time. From people on the street. Anonymous at first. Typed, no signatures. Some of us are worried about the changes on the block since you moved in, one said. Please be more considerate of longtime residents. Another, this used to be a peaceful neighborhood. Maybe you should ask yourself why there have been so many issues since you arrived. I recognized the phrasing. We? Some of us. Frank words. He'd moved from official channels to social ones. Poison instead of paperwork. I kept the letters in a drawer, didn't respond. Then one evening my doorbell rang. It was Mike. Different Mike than the card knights, but the same type of solid working guy, from 2 houses down. I'd only spoken to him a few times. Got a minute? He asked. Sure, I said. He looked uncomfortable. Look, I don't know you well, he said. But I know enough to know you're not out here throwing parties or letting the place go to hell. Frank's been saying some things about you. About noise and damage and the wall. Then today he mentioned something about you spying on him with cameras. Just wanted to hear your side. I almost laughed. Come in, I said. We sat at my kitchen table. I poured us both a glass of water. I told him the story. All of it. The notices, the scratch, the wall, the footage. He listened. When I finished, he shook his head. That explains a lot, he said. He's been talking like you're some kind of menace. Said the city's keeping an eye on you. They watched a video, I said, of him kicking down the wall. He whistled softly. Yeah, he said. He didn't mention that part. No, I said. Mike finished his water, stood up. For what it's worth, he said, I believe you. I've seen how he is when he doesn't get his way. My wife said he came by the other day hinting we should keep an eye on what's going on next door to you. She thought it was weird. Thanks for telling me, I said. He nodded. One more thing, he said. We're having a little block get-together next weekend. Few of us want to talk about some ongoing issues. You should come. Is this a trap? I asked, half joking. Nah, he said. If anything, it's the opposite. The block get-together turned out to be 6 neighbors in lawn chairs on Mike's driveway, with a cooler of sodas and a plate of cookies someone had put out more out of habit than enthusiasm. Frank was there too. Of course. He stood a little apart, arms folded, watching. Mike cleared his throat. So, he said, we all live here. We all want this street to stay decent. Lately, there's been a lot of tension, complaints, rumors. I figured instead of letting it simmer, we could just talk like adults. No one said anything for a few seconds. Then Mrs. Brown, an older woman from across the street, spoke up. I don't like anonymous letters, she said. If someone has a problem, they should sign their name. She looked around. No one claimed them. Frank shifted. I haven't written anything anonymous, he said. If I have something to say, I say it. That's half the problem, Mike murmured. Frank ignored him. He pointed at me. Look, he said, I'm not trying to be the bad guy here. But since Daniel moved in, we've had more city visits than in years. Grass too long. Noise. Now the wall. I care about this street. I've worked hard to keep standards. Maybe he's a nice guy, but he doesn't seem to care about the impact of his choices. He spoke with that same confidence he'd used with the inspector the first time. I let him finish. Then I stood up. I moved here for quiet, I said. Not to fight with anyone. I didn't file a single complaint about anyone on this street. But I've received multiple from the city, all originating after Frank raised concerns. Frank snorted. Coincidence, he said. That wall collapsing wasn't a coincidence, I said. And the city agreed. Mrs. Brown frowned. What wall? She asked. The retaining wall behind our houses, Frank said quickly. It was cracked for years. I reported it because I didn't want everyone's yard sliding down the hill. Next thing I know, he's accusing me of sabotaging it. He had video, I said. Everyone turned. What kind of video? A younger neighbor, Lena, asked. A camera on my property, I said. Pointed at my yard, it caught him digging out the base of the wall at 1 a.m. and kicking the stones. 2 days later, it fell. The city saw it. That's why they closed the case against me. All eyes swung to Frank. That's ridiculous, he said, a little too loudly. He's twisting it. You told the inspector you were just testing it, I said, and that you didn't mean for it to break. Do you want me to show them the footage? He went pale. You recorded me without my permission? He demanded. On my property, yes, I said. After my truck got keyed. You have proof of that too? Mike asked. No, I said. But after seeing the video of the wall, I have a pretty good guess. Mrs. Brown looked at Frank. Did you dig at that wall? She asked. He opened his mouth, closed it. I was checking it, he said. Like I told them. If I hadn't, nobody would have done anything. It was a hazard. That's not what you said in the office, I said. He glared at me. You think you can come in here, new guy, and turn everyone against me? He said. I've been looking out for this street since before you even knew it existed. Looking out for it, Lena said slowly. Or controlling it. I never had problems with anyone until he moved in, Frank shot back. That's not true, Mrs. Brown said. You complained about the Johnsons' boat, the Smiths' holiday lights, and my grandson's car. Half the time it was just because you didn't like how something looked. That's different, Frank said. They listened. They respected the standards we've all agreed on. I don't remember agreeing to you kicking down walls and blaming other people, Mike said. Frank looked around, realizing the room, or rather the driveway, had shifted. He did something then that I didn't expect. He exhaled. Long. Sharp. Fine, he said. Yes, I messed with the wall. I nudged it. I thought if it collapsed, someone would finally fix it. It was already going. I just helped it along. Then you reported him for it, Lena said. I reported the hazard, he snapped. And the letters? Mrs. Brown asked. Were those you? He hesitated a fraction too long. I told him he didn't fit here, he admitted. but someone had to say it. We have a way of doing things. You mean your way, Mike said. Call it what you want, Frank replied. All I know is, ever since he started complaining to the city about me, I never filed a complaint about you, I said. I brought evidence when I was called in to defend myself. That's it. He looked at me. If you didn't want trouble, he said, you shouldn't have started recording your neighbors. If you didn't want trouble, I said, you shouldn't have given them something worth recording. The group went quiet. Frank looked around waiting for someone to back him up. No one did. Mrs. Brown spoke first. I think we've all heard enough, she said. Daniel, I for one am glad you showed us what actually happened. Frank, I'm tired of you acting like the sheriff of this street. Mike nodded. Lena crossed her arms. Yeah, she said. This isn't your HOA kingdom. It's a neighborhood. Big difference. Frank's jaw worked. You're all ungrateful, he said finally. I've kept this place nice for years. Without me, this street would look like a dump. Maybe, Mike said. Or maybe it would look like people live here, not tenants in your museum. Frank grabbed his lawn chair, folded it with more force than necessary, and walked away. No one called after him. Things didn't magically become perfect after that. He still lived next door. He still mowed too early on Saturdays. He still scowled when he saw my truck in the drive. But the power he'd had, the influence, the automatic benefit of the doubt, that was gone. The city stopped sending me notices. The anonymous letters stopped. People waved when they saw me. A couple even joked about Frank's standards, like it was finally okay to say out loud. One afternoon, Mrs. Brown knocked on my door with a plate of cookies. I stood up to him because you stood up for yourself, she said. Most people would have just moved. I thought about it, I admitted. I'm glad you didn't, she said. He needed someone to tell the truth where he could hear it. Later that evening, I sat on my back steps and looked at the repaired wall. The contractor had done a good job. It looked stronger than before, less likely to fall just because someone wanted to prove a point. My cameras were still up, not because I was planning another trap, because I'd learned something. People like Frank count on others staying quiet, on them being too polite or too tired or too unsure to say, this is what really happened. He tried to build a story where I was the careless new guy ruining his perfect street. He tried to turn the city, the neighbors, and the rules against me. In the end, all I did was hold up a mirror and let everyone watch. So if you ask me whether I made him confess, I'd say this. I didn't force the words out of his mouth. I just took away all the places he used to hide them.